Hey, everybody. This is Jacob Stoops, and we are back again with episode number 72 of the Page 2 podcast. And this is a really unique episode because this is the first time in the history of our podcast that we are recording not necessarily two guests at the same time, but two guests, different interviews on the same day. So it is a back-to-back double header for us at the Page 2 podcast. If you don't know me, I am an SEO director at Search Discovery, and I am joined by my trusty and faithful co-host, Mr. Jeff Luella, Senior Technical SEO at The Wirecutter, a division of the New York Times. How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, howdy, hey, things are going great.
How are you feeling about the second interview of the back-to-back double headers? Did you have to do any stretches in between interviews?
I actually did. I went outside and did. I swung a golf club. I got this new
Did you really?
I got this new golf club. It's like not a real golf club. It has like a weight on the end, and it's like very flexible. And it's so when you pull it back, it like stretches you at the same time, which is half my problem with my golf game is that I'm not very flexible. So I golf like I'm an 84-year-old man. So, which is my score. I wish was an 84. So
yeah.
So it was one of those where I was like, I got this new stretching tool and go out and stretch a little bit and walked around the house a little bit just to get refreshed.
Yeah, and this is a real behind the scenes. I went upstairs and on one hand, I got some chicken out to marinate it for dinner immediately following the show. So if you hear my stomach rumbling, it's because I'm about to cook some nice teriyaki chicken. And on the other hand, my wife goes, "You've got another interview today. You've been down there all day. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Honey, this is very important. Don't you understand?" And like when I give her my podcast thing, like it doesn't compute. She's a completely different profession, a teacher. It holds no water with her that I run a podcast, and it's basically like what you and everybody else. So got a healthy ration.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong. But a healthy ration of shit when I went up there, mixed with some potentially tasty chicken. That was weird. But anyways, we've got an amazing guest today, and we're going to bring our guest on now. It is Mr. Kevin Indig, SEO director at Shopify. Kevin, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going great, actually. We have Good Friday today, which means all my Canadian colleagues are enjoying some time off, and I enjoy some productivity time. So I feel really good.
Very well earned. And Kevin, where in the world are you? Because I'm detecting a bit of an accent, and I'm not familiar with where you're from.
That's a good point. I was born and raised in Germany.
Okay.
My dad is American, mom's German. Came over to the US 6 years ago. Lived in the San Francisco Bay Area until about half a year ago, or maybe a bit longer than half a year, and then recently migrated to Chicago. So did a complete 180 when it comes to weather.
Yeah, and eventually, it is a complete 180 going from Germany, but then San Francisco, which is typically warm, nice, fair weather, and then Chicago, which is very Midwest, lots of cold, snow, windy, blustery. It reminds me of so I went on vacation, which is why we're recording episodes, twice in one day. Yesterday I was in 90-degree weather. And when I got home, and that was in Phoenix, Arizona, and 90 degrees is cold there, by the way. The people that we visited, my in-laws, were very cold and not very happy to be swimming in 90-degree weather, which is pretty funny by itself. But then we get back and it's April 1st, 30 degrees in Ohio. Very typical. And my kids were not very happy about that. And neither was I.
Time to move.
Yeah, time to move. I'm going to San Francisco, where Kevin was.
Yeah, it's a fun place. Yeah, I was gonna say it's hell expensive. That's the weather and the living costs, they run proportionally.
Yeah, that's why the South is so appealing to people now. It's just my house was the same price as what it was up north to an extent, but like my taxes are 1/8 of what they were up there, and we get like 10 times more. I got to deal with some old time people here that don't see the progress the world's making, but at the same time, we are changing that a little bit. So.
There you go. And you're one state away from Florida man.
Yeah.
So
at least I'm at the top of Georgia. I'm at the top of Georgia. So Florida's, but I am going there next week. So I will be in the Florida beaches. They do have beautiful beaches.
Yes. Yeah. Next week, we're going to be going back to the roots of season 1 when I did not have a co-host. I don't know if I'm going to know how to survive without somebody breaking apart the awkwardness.
Well, I add a lot more awkwardness to it. So it might,
you do. Yeah. So to people listening to this now, if you listened to the episode before, we made Jeff a the technical SEO's technical SEO ask all of the content marketing questions, which was pretty funny to watch him squirm a little bit when he had to ask questions about content. So
it's like, content, is that really important?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, so Jeff, why don't you cover off on, we've got a couple of things before we interview Kevin, a couple of things we want to touch on that are very important. If you've listened to this podcast, you'll know, but we want to make sure for those new listeners that you know about these couple of organizations that we like to put our thoughts behind.
Yeah, definitely. And the one that we're, promoting is because of the sudden passing of Hamlet is RankSense and his company. It's one of those tools out there that is kind of cutting edge. I mean, if you listen to, like Dan Taylor or a lot of technical SEOs, they talk about edge SEO a lot. And what RankSense does is actually makes that easy. Like, you don't actually need to, it's good to learn it all, of course, but it's really great for one of those tools that will actually help you implement things on your website with minimal. I mean, the initial setup, you'll probably need some of your engineering time, but after that, you'll be able to run tests and get things implemented a lot faster through RankSense's tool. And you'll be able to find out by running tools across, all the content title tags and meta descriptions, and being able to run tests on those to know what works. Also, if you wanted to implement things like body content, this is one thing I always, and kind of working, in the e-commerce world, it's like, category pages always stink at content, and like I would always want to get content installed on or implemented in there, and devs would be like, oh well, we're using Indeca and we can't do that on this and that. So using a tool like RankSense will allow you to kind of create like a meta CMS that'll allow you to be able to implement things in there and show prove that things will work, so that way then we can go back to the engineering and say, this is the stuff that works and we need to be able to implement that there. So it kind of takes any of that SEO guesswork out of it. One of the topics we're going to be talking about today is testing in SEO. So this is a tool that can definitely help us test out. And the way that it works is that it integrates with Cloudflare and uses edge workers to push your content or changes out on the edge. So into the CDNs that allow you to allow Google to read the content that's going on there without necessarily changing what's happening on your backend. It's pretty easy to use. I've never used it, but from what Jake said is like you can upload a Google Sheet or a sheet to it, and all your changes will get uploaded into those pages. So that's actually one thing that's, hey, we all work in spreadsheets every day. It's like, it's great if I can just like send one up there and there's my optimization.
It's literally a freaking Google Sheet. It's no coding involved. You want to update a page title, a meta description, so on and so forth. Like, it's literally just put it in a Google Sheet and it gets published on your website. Like, the reason I did this, for those people that get that reference, it's literally like some Dr. Evil shit. It's like such an amazing idea. Like, doesn't Meta CMS, like Meta CMS, doesn't that sound like something Dr. Evil would cook up? It's just, it's awesome. It's a really awesome product. And it's a super creative way to solve what is probably the biggest problem on the agency side, and that's implementation. And Hamlet, especially when he talked with us, it was very clear that he was very much an efficiency and a speed guy in terms of getting things done as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and breaking down the barriers to get things done. And that's exactly what this tool does. It's pretty amazing, and it is incredibly forward thinking. And he's, of course, he was always very forward thinking in the
Oh yeah.
The way that he, especially with Python, but plenty of other areas, the way that he kind of thought about the industry a little bit differently, very much kind of on the bleeding edge of things.
No, I totally agree. And he was one of those guys also that always, I mean, I think we've talked about Hamlet 1,000 times so far. And like, even before his passing, he was like an inspiration to a lot of people, and just especially on the technical SEO side. I don't know about those content people over there, but it's on the technical side of SEO. He was like an inspiration and it's just such a great person to talk to. That it's like all of that goes through into his product, right? It's like he was putting this product together, which was to make it really easy for everyone to be able to use. And I know he had a motto like everything, like why waste, or he was against the wait for 6 months for us to see results and know instantly, and then that tools like this allow us to test and know way quicker than in the past. Like if you just updated on the whole site, by the time you get around to the results and know if it worked or not, like you might have just did some negative effects. So the ability to be able to implement some of this, see if it's positive, and if it's positive, then push it out to the whole site is great.
If you work at an agency, time is of the essence, right? You typically run on time-based contracts. You've got 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and that's the amount of time that you have to achieve the results that the client is expecting. And when they get to the end of that contract, quite honestly, typically they don't give a shit about the fact that you couldn't get stuff implemented because the development queue was 10 months long, right? All they care about is what's the bottom line. I paid you money. Did you get me results or not? And sometimes it's a really tough conversation. And I think this is one of those tools that makes that entire cycle a lot easier.
Right. I pity the fools that work at agencies. I'm kidding. I was an agency guy my whole life.
You were.
Now I've seen the lights.
You've seen the light. You're in-house. So let's also touch on United Search. So we won't do the full live read. We've been promoting United Search quite a bit this season. So if you want to know more about United Search, it's just unitedsearch.org. And the confusing part, their Twitter handle is search_United. So it's actually like a little bit backwards, which gets me tongue twisted a little bit sometimes when talking about it. But the big thing that they're into and that we're into is making sure that there's kind of fair and balanced representation for everybody. And that is not just generally in the industry, but specific to public speaking engagements, and for people who are in an underrepresented group. So your BIPOC, BAME, LGBTQIA+, or over 55 women, basically anybody that's not me or Jeff, middle-aged white guy. This is a group to help you figure out how you can land public speaking engagements, which as it stands now, the industry, anytime you look at a speaker lineup, especially if you've been in SEO anytime in the last 10 years, you'll see a lot of the same sorts of people recycled. And while some of them may be good, there definitely hasn't historically been a lot of balance. And this organization is really dedicated towards ending some of that implicit bias and really kind of balancing out the roll call of speakers and giving some new voices and some new people the opportunity. And there's also an opportunity, if you're experienced, to be a mentor. And I know that they've gotten that program underway. So definitely go check them out. It is a more informal relationship that we have with them. It's not like a formal sponsorship. It's just something that's near and dear to our heart. And, we want to make sure that the perspectives that we're bringing to the industry through our podcast are fair and balanced. We want to hear from everybody, big and small, or and I shouldn't even say it that way, experienced, inexperienced, somebody that's known, somebody that's not known, somebody in-house, somebody agency side. We want all the perspectives. We believe that they're all very important. So that's probably a more eloquent way to say it. Anyways, Kevin, it's your time on the hot seat, and dare I say, from the outside looking in, having never met Kevin until literally 20 minutes ago, I think it's pretty fair to say that Kevin is one of the most respected SEOs kind of on the planet at this point. I don't know, Jeff, what do you think?
Definitely.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
reaching out to him,
yeah.
Kevin, I'll say reaching out to you to do the podcast. It's like, no, it's my pleasure, and I'm like, so nice.
No,
Right.
I mean it. I
On
mean
top
it.
of all the notch.
You guys are too
Pleasant
kind.
Pleasant and humble. So Kevin, tell us about your background, your origin story. Who were you before you were an SEO, and how did you get into SEO?
Yeah, it's funny because I had a lot of luck getting on the right track quickly and early in my career. So born in Germany, I think my first exposure to SEO was around 16 years old. I grew up a gamer kid, when I was, gosh, I must have been 9, maybe 10 years old when the first Game Boy came out, Sega Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, that kind of, that left a huge imprint on my childhood. And of course, it ventured over into computer gaming, and then became really hot when broadband internet became available in Germany. So I was sitting there, burning away the money of my father when the internet was still charged by the minute. Oh gosh, I brought in some hefty bills. Poor dad. But anyway, so at some point, I wanted to play tournaments with my friends, and we played Counter-Strike, StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo, those kind of games. And so for a tournament, you needed to have a website. And I was the guy to figure out how to build a website. I taught myself crappy HTML, CSS, a little bit of Photoshop, and build a website completely in tables. It was horrendous. And that was a lot of fun. And then I ventured a bit deeper into that, built some websites for other people. And sometimes they would even pay me, but it was nothing crazy. I still remember, I don't know if I ever talked about this publicly, but I still remember that there was like a C4D software, which is basically is architecture type of stuff where they create 3D models. And there was a trend when I started learning all that stuff where you would create abstract graphics with some filters and then cut them out and implement it in your background of the website. And it was kind of that designer thing. That was the hottest shit. And that led me on the bandwagon of SEO. At some point, I asked myself where all these people coming from who visit the site. Then I started to learn about this concept of a search engine and what Google is or other search engines at the time. So I kind of I followed down the rabbit hole, and there was a lot of self-teaching, reading forums at night, and talking to other people, and being completely mind blown. But then I didn't get the first chance to really start into the career of SEO until after I graduated from college. So I went to college. I went to a business school in Germany that taught completely in English. I was still, for me at the time, SEO was still kind of this almost like hobby or interesting thing you do, but I never really considered a career because I could not imagine anybody paying for that really.
Yep.
And so I was more on the trajectory of a traditional career. My father is a doctor. I wanted to become a doctor all my life. At 18, realized that the job is not the ideal that you want to go for when you see your father being a doctor. There's a lot more paperwork and bureaucracy and so on. So I decided to go into business. I actually got the chance to work at a private bank in Switzerland after college. So I did that. I thought that was fantastic. I thought maybe going into investment banking, mergers and acquisition, these kind of things. And it's probably because it comes full circle, right? Because now I'm last couple of years I've been more involved in these kind of topics again, so it's fun. But at least mergers and acquisition. But back at the time, I thought that was the path. And then a year in, I realized that's like a dying industry to a degree. Like first of all, Switzerland was not the money hub anymore that used to be. Investment or private banking sounds cool, but it's not as cool until you're really like at Goldman Sachs or some of these companies, doing really crazy M&A deals. And so I decided to pivot completely and start a traineeship at an enterprise agency in Germany. And that changed everything. That put me on the speed track because I learned everything on the job. I was really taught SEO. And it was an SEO or one of the best SEO agencies in Germany. And I was very lucky to get in there. And they really, they took me by the hand and they taught me everything. And then things took off from there.
So I think we've got a very common background. And I'm honestly going to say, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this podcast, except for maybe my own bio episode, maybe not even then. So I also was born in Germany.
There we go.
Yeah, and I'm very, very much from the United States. Been here most of my life, with the exception of my first 2 years. And and this might date me a little bit, I was born in Germany at a time when it was still West and East Germany.
Yes.
So I don't know, Kevin, were you pre or post West and East, or were you just after the Berlin Wall coming down? Like, were you before or after that time?
I was before, 3 years before the wall came down. I was born in the West, grew up in the West, lived in the West. Where were you born?
Wiesbaden,
Oh, yeah.
which I believe is southwest. Yeah.
That's not far away at all. It's like an hour from where I'm from.
That is, I'm amazed that you even know that, because from what I understand, it's and I don't remember any of it, very, very small town. My dad, the reason I was born there, not because I was from there or anybody that I knew was from there, it was because my dad was in the Air Force at the time. So I was an Air Force brat. And he was stationed overseas on the island of Crete, which is off the coast of Greece. So for those fans of history, the island of Crete has a lot of history. Probably going back a couple of thousand years with the Greeks and the Spartans and so on and so forth. But even more recently, World War II, in which case, obviously, the Allies won World War II. So of course now there are U.S. bases, or there were at that time, on Crete, and he was stationed, I believe, at a place called the Heraklion Air Force Base. And from what I understand, this is the way he told it, they did not have like the proper facilities there to be delivering babies. My mom was pregnant, so they went to Germany. That's where I was delivered, and that's how I kind of came into existence. And then fast forward it, I also self-taught, started as a web designer, not a gamer. Of course, I did gaming, but self-taught as well. Learned HTML, CSS, learned kind of your basic coding, Dreamweaver, little bit of Photoshop, and I started as a graphic designer. Fun fact: the first website I ever built was a blogspot, and it had music in the background that you could not turn off, because I thought that was cool, and also flashing lightning. And it was a badass website for sure, but really annoying in today's terms.
I think I still have my first website somewhere. It was on a zip disk, if that makes sense.
Is it really a website if it's on a zip disk?
Well, no, I mean, I downloaded it. That's where I would save everything. Because when I was in the community college, I took an HTML class, and that was part of the prerequisites. You needed a zip drive that was SCSI, and the only SCSI device I ever had was that Mac that was at school. So I had to figure out how to hook that up. So I had a SCSI to parallel port adapter and stuff to make it work at home. But I had to dig it up, because I know I took everything off of those zip disks before I got rid of the zip drive. So I have it on a web, the big, I have an Amazon Cloud account that has every file that I've ever made on it. So
wow, a lot of files.
Yeah.
So Kevin, so you mentioned you started at an agency. They took you and they kind of brought you up. So what agency was that? Was that Searchmetrics, or was there something before that?
Yeah, it wasn't yet Searchmetrics. It was an agency called the Reach Group. And to be fair, somebody else owns that name in Germany today. So it's the same name, different company. And it was I was life is crazy sometimes, man. It was legit luck that I stumbled into them. I don't know how I convinced them to take me up as a trainee, but they had some of the best SEOs who then went out to become big in-house SEOs or start their own agencies today. So it was it was a very interesting, exciting moment, I would say, in kind of German SEO history. And I did that for a couple of years. They really tuned me up, taught me everything, including all the meta skills, the consulting stuff, because at the time SEO was still a dark magic black box. I mean, it still kind of is, but not as dark anymore. And we would go to enterprise companies, huge companies like Bosch and Altor and so on, like public billion-dollar companies, and would go to, like CEOs and general managers who are way older than us and telling them how to invest like some of their money into this new thing that they would not understand, right? So being exposed to that early on really taught me a lot. And then after a couple of years in, I was lucky to join Searchmetrics, and that's because not to make the story too long, but it's similar. You can imagine how tight the SEO scene in Germany is, right? Everybody kind of knows everybody. And there's this conference that everybody meets at once a year. There's several, but there's this one that is kind of the touch point for everybody. And I met Marcus Tober there, the founder and then CEO of Searchmetrics. I knew he was looking for someone in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I didn't really play. I mean, I always wanted to live in the US all my life, but I wasn't that I looked for this. I saw this position. I wanted to pitch him, but I did want to talk to him about it because I found it interesting. And he told me, well, we don't really want to send someone over because it's very tricky with the visa and the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And then I told him, hey, I got this paper that says I can live and work in the US. Maybe we should talk. And he was like, yeah, let's talk. And a week later, he invited me to Berlin, 3 hours away. I went to this crazy interview that took 6 hours. And I drove home, and I was, I would have never thought that I got the interview, the job, right? I was like, this is a complete disaster, because they had me like whiteboard what a search engine looks like, what the different elements are, how it works, HTML code, everything, all that stuff, right? And then I knew many of these parts, but man, that interview was deep and heavy. So next morning he calls me and he's like, okay, I can see myself working with you. And I was like, okay, amazing. And he was like, well, so we need you to come to Berlin for a couple of months, and then we'll send you over to the US. I was like, oh shoot, okay. And so we did it. He gave me a chance, definitely took a gamble on me. And then I went to the Bay Area for Searchmetrics. And my job was basically to lead and build the professional services team. So Searchmetrics obviously is a software vendor with a heavy enterprise focus, but some clients have more agency needs. And so we're something like an in-house agency for Searchmetrics clients. And I worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. That was another one of these accelerators where I just got, the chance to work with some of the best. So eBay was one of them. And they would send me to the eBay campus to work a full day every week for over a year. So I was basically almost part of the eBay SEO team. And so like that domain there's just some crazy stuff you can try out. And so we did things like move subdomains to subdirectories and saw like immediate impact, but it's not this kind of before and after test. They have like a team of data scientists that will tell you how long to run the test, what to look out for, what metrics, all the kind of stuff, similar to how we have it at Shopify today. And we had some stuff with content on e-commerce and whatnot. So I think it was not necessarily rocket science, but I think we're able to test things with some of the highest fidelity I had ever seen, because eBay is such a large, scalable, and trustworthy domain.
And so where did you go after Searchmetrics? You've got in my opinion, like a fairly impressive resume. And not only that, it seems like every opportunity was a slight stepping stone up. So where did you go after that?
Yeah, so after Searchmetrics, I joined a company called Dailymotion, which is a YouTube competitor. I think at the time we had over 300 million indexed pages. So huge, ginormous site. I was director of SEO there. That company was then bought by a conglomerate called Vivendi, and they own Universal Music and a couple of other huge companies. And they consolidated quite a bit and moved all the resources back to either New York City or Paris, France. And I wanted to stay in the Bay Area. And I had done a little bit of side consulting for Atlassian. So Atlassian took me on full time. I joined them as head of technical SEO, then head of SEO and a couple of other inbound channels, stayed there for a couple of years, then hit a kind of, how should I call it? Like I came to a point where I wanted to take the next step. There was no kind of good opportunity for me at Atlassian. So put myself out there, and got an opportunity to join G2 as a VP of SEO and content. G2 is a B2B software marketplace / review site. And then this kind of opportunity at Shopify fell into my lap. And so in December of last year, I joined Shopify as director of SEO.
So what was it about Shopify after coming off of G2 that made you want to make the jump and the transition?
It is a good question. It was by no means planned. I was actually very happy at G2. I think it's a fantastic company, and we did a lot of amazing things at G2. And I was very lucky and happy to find a great successor who's now doing a really good job. And so it was not planned. I got connected through a mentor with Luc Lebec, who is the VP of Growth at Shopify. And it was basically much more aligned with my mission. I have my personal mission on my website, and I had it there for years, right? So it's not something that just recently came up with to justify my move to Shopify. It's been there for a while. And so I think Shopify has a very impactful mission. It's a $100 billion company instead of a $100 million company. And I'm sure G2 will grow and will be a fantastic big company. And I was, able to work with amazing people like Luc, like Morgan Brown, like now Ilya Grigorik joined not too long ago from Google. And it's this kind of all-star team, and one of these opportunities that I wasn't looking for in any means. But it's just one of these that I couldn't pass on.
You weren't looking for it, but it found you.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's kind of what happens when you put yourself out there and you kind of build your personal brand. It's, I've been lucky too with that. It's like, I mean, I'm not nearly known as big as Kevin, but I can just imagine how many offers you probably, or recruiters you get just in general with people reaching out, because I know how many I get, and it's half of them don't even make sense. I had a level PPC job just floated my way, and I was like, have you even looked at my LinkedIn? Like, you wouldn't even notice. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I think they just blast it all out there, which is
they do. Like, you still get offers when you just join a new company, hey, 2 months ago I joined a company. Why would I now look, so but anyway, that's its own game. And I came to peace with it. But it's true when you're more out there. And to be honest, that helped me immensely when I left Atlassian. That was the first time in my career where I didn't have the next job lined up. And instead I said, hey, let me finish this clean slate, bring everything to an end. And then from January 1st on, I'll be a free agent. And then I publicly said, hey, I'm looking for a job. Who wants to talk? That was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, because so many companies reached out to me. Many of those didn't even have an official job posting. They were like, hey, we want to create this position. Let's talk. And so I had the opportunity to talk to some amazing companies. And so whenever, I think whenever we can do that, granted, I don't have kids, I don't have a family, I don't have, all these responsibilities yet. But when you can be a bit selfish, and you want to make a career change, build a bit of a personal brand, push yourself out there, that does wonders for you.
Yeah. How did you go from head of technical SEO to VP of content in an SEO? I mean, I guess looking through your resume, I mean, you've done it all. So, I mean, it makes sense. I just found it interesting when I was looking. I was like, man, you went from head of technical SEO to like head of VP of SEO and content at G2.
Which Jeff, is like, that's impossible.
That's yeah, like I don't even think content matters. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think on the one hand, to be fair, I was doing more than just technical SEO at Atlassian toward the 1 to 2 last years that I've been at the company. And on the other hand, I think there are two ways you can go about it, right? You can go deeper and become more specialized. There's some amazing people out there, and then you get to this point where you're technical and good enough where you automate many workflows yourself. You write your own scripts, right? You go to a really, really deep foundational level where the line between a marketer and an engineer legitimately blurs, and that's fantastic. And the world needs more people like that, and that's amazing. Or you go the other way where you go more upstream and you broaden your horizon. And I wanted to broaden up, to be honest, and that's where this kind of intersection of content and SEO made a lot of sense for me. And I think that's the trajectory I want to follow. But I spent a lot of time on the technical side. I went deep, I think, to a limit that felt legit to me. And I knew that from there, the marginal gains and understanding come from months of pounding different libraries and code and all that kind of stuff. And I think I felt good with how deep I went, and then I wanted to go the other way.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, where I've historically been known as a technical SEO, and therefore it's like the chicken or egg. All the technical SEO opportunities get assigned to me, and it becomes really hard to branch out. But I get more personal enjoyment from going upstream and doing content marketing and kind of living on that side of the fence. And I would say, in terms of like career, like craft fulfillment, my time in-house at startups.com, we focus mostly on content marketing, and it was so much fun. Not that I don't like, I enjoy technical SEO. I don't enjoy getting bucketed into it. My favorite days sometimes can be like writing structured data, but like my favorite thing to work on in SEO, of course, is the content side of things. It's really, really interesting. So that's why we always tell everybody, like, try to dabble in a little bit of everything. You can be you don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. So find an area to specialize, right? But you have to be able to play in a lot of different spaces, if for nothing else, so that you don't get bucketed in one direction that you can never get out of, which sometimes, like Jeff, as a primarily technical SEO, have you ever in your career felt like bottlenecked by the fact that you were a technical SEO?
It was amazing. It's still amazing because I still am one. I run the Tech SEO Reddit group. I have my domains, thetechseo.com. I went all in on that, and because there weren't as many back when I went all in on it, and now it's like, holy cow, so many people are tech SEOs, and which maybe I'm like just opening my eyes to it, but they were like, there's some really, 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 really good people in there that now make me question whether I should even like question that, like Patrick Stocks and J.R. Oaks and all these people. Though they're the nicest people in the world and they will help me out with anything I need, I just sometimes am like, how do you like, JR went from like making like glass windows to like an amazing technical SEO. And I'm just like, wow, this is great. I mean, I the one thing I love about the tech side is that there's so many different like configurations, and the technology is always pushing forward. And I wasn't very good at writing growing up. So I was better at writing code than I was writing, content. And I do at times, like at one time I was like, I'm going to start writing blogs, and I like have like 23 of them started and none of them finished, because I'm just like, I'll be writing something and then I have someone that's amazing at content like post these out there, and I'm like, oh, who cares about me? And that's part of the imposter syndrome, right? It's like, like, hey, like I have nothing to add to that topic that that JR or Pat like Stocks is like crazy writing them now. So having him like write about page speed, it's like, well, he covered everything I was going to say. I'll just link to him on Twitter.
It's like the SEO version of Michelangelo talking about painting the Sistine Chapel. I mean, come
exactly.
on. Yeah. So Kevin, are you a writer? Do you consider yourself good at writing, and do you feel like you have to be a good writer to be a good content marketer?
That is a very good question. I don't think I would consider myself a good writer. I do enjoy writing though. To me, writing is thinking. I do write a ton and I publish some of it. And I'm not sure if you have to be a good writer to be a great content marketer. Similar to how I don't think you have to be a good coder to be a good technical SEO. You have to have an eye for it, and you have to have an eye for good content and what good content means, right? Like, we live in this world where anybody can create content. It's easier than ever. Everybody does create content, and the bar and production cost for outstanding content gets higher and higher. So nowadays, it's an all or nothing game. You either have some of the best content in the world, or you don't matter. It's that level that we're at. Mm-hmm. And so I think as an SEO or a content marketer, you need to be able to recognize what that means in a specific context, meaning agnostic to the actual topic and just across different topics, or have a system in place that helps you understand when that content is outstanding. And I think it's the same with technical SEO. I think you can be an amazing technical SEO. You don't have to be able to reverse engineer a complete React app, without any comments or guidance. But at the same time, you need to be able to understand the basic steps from crawling, rendering, indexing, ranking, everything between there. Yeah. When a technical issue occurs, how to find technical issues. And if you can then sit down with an actual engineer to figure out what exactly caused that issue, that is fine too, but that's how I look at it.
So speaking of creating content, this little thing called podcasting has started to grow. And 10 years ago, if you had a podcast, that was some really tricky stuff technologically, right? You were way ahead of the game. If you have a podcast today, it's no big thing. It's like the blog of 10 years ago. So everybody has a podcast. The barrier to entry has never been lower. It's really easy to do. Kevin, you've started a podcast, and I'm probably setting this up horribly, but since we're on the line of content creation, what inspired you to start your podcast? It was the Tech-Bound podcast, by the way.
Thank you. Yep. It was the same thing that inspired me to publish some of my writing or start speaking. I was doing a lot of that already. The writing thing was that I was writing for myself to clarify my thoughts. And at some point I was like, why don't I just publish that stuff and get some feedback? And then it opened the door to, first of all, getting amazing feedback. I now have a newsletter with almost 5,000 subscribers, which means that any email that I send out, I get at least one person that tells me, hey, this is what I see, or have you considered this and that? And that is immensely valuable. And at the same time, it's very similar with podcasting. It actually came up because I was having these amazing conversations at conferences, and you get into this like flow, and you have like this, you feel this great energy, and you're just riffing off of each other. And I was like, oh, I wish I could store that, because then you go to the bar and you forget everything, or you drink too much, or you just sleep, and the next morning you're like, oh, I only remember 50% of what we talked about. And I was like, damn, I want to record that. And that's how the podcast actually came to be. And you see the early episodes, they were all in person. So I actually bought a Zoom recorder and the Zoom HD, not the Zoom software. And I bought 2 mics, and I actually met with people, and I recorded on my phone. And we recorded this conversation. We're just riffing, just like, just talking about stuff that was interesting to us. And now, of course, everything is digitally. And I can't wait for things to open up again, for me to go on tour and speak to more people live, because you create that energy and you want to capture it. And that's the motivation of the podcast, And so I think it can be interesting. I think there's some really valuable nuggets in there. But it's not this, to me, it's not a thing that I want to focus 100% energy on to take it to 10,000 downloads a month or something, neither do I have the time. But it's more of a passion project that I want to share with people who are interested in it, that I personally enjoy, and try to make it as accessible as possible for everyone.
So would you rather podcast or write?
Yeah, that is honestly a question that I've been...
Or do your newsletter. Seems like all three take up, to do it well, it takes time. Like, and you're only one person. How do you balance that? It's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot happening with the newsletter and the writing. A lot of the writing is funneled into the newsletter. The podcast is a net new thing that certainly takes some time. And so with the newsletter, with the podcast, I try to batch it a lot. So I whenever I have some time, like today, for example, is a good day because Canada is off. It's Good Friday. So I have a bit of time at hand. It doesn't hurt me too much in my actual work. So I set aside an hour to record a podcast. I just talk to Pep Laya, who's a super smart guy. With the writing, that has kind of lots of benefits, and it's more like a residue or a byproduct of my thinking that goes on anyway. Plus, I do actually think that by me formulating my thoughts into words, I have to clarify those ideas, and that has a positive impact on my actual work at Shopify or anything else that I do. So there is an overlap in the benefit, but it's true. Like I have to be very, very diligent and careful with my time, because I need to weigh every minute of the day at this point. And if I had to, it's actually a question I have been asking myself, which one would I prefer? And I'm still wrestling with the right answer, because on the one hand, I think, not that I think that I'm a great writer, but I think I'm a better writer than a podcaster. Part of that is the accent. Part of that is just that, I don't know. I feel like, it's not, there are many people out there with a fantastic personality and charisma, and they're funny, and they're all this kind of stuff, right? And so I don't think I'm necessarily that. But it's certainly a format that I find to be more efficient in production than writing, right? If I write, say, like 1,000 words, it will probably take me 2 to maybe 3 hours, depending on the topic. With a podcast, I can literally just talk to someone else, right? I did play and just like turn it on and record it and like prepare some questions and stuff, but it's way lower production cost than writing. I did play with the thought a little bit about starting a podcast that is like fully produced, that is not an interview or conversational format, but that has an actual like production. And then just very quickly realized that the time it takes is way too large, and so I'll park that project for another time in the future.
Yeah, it's funny. I think starting up 10 years ago, I blogged, right? And then I think I quickly realized the same thing, that maybe other people, it comes easier, the writing aspect and the clarifying of thought. And not only that, in order to do it, I feel like you have to have an interesting enough perspective to warrant even putting out there. But
Yeah.
to actually get the words out of my head and onto paper, it takes a lot of time. And podcasting, at least for me, is an area where I decided to focus on, because it combines kind of all of the elements of it's a lot easier, at least in terms of the front end, actual production of content. Now, you can argue that the editing and everything that goes into it on the back end that has nothing to do with podcasting, things like booking guests, editing audio, doing Photoshop for the promotion, doing social media, like that has its place in time. And I don't think you fully realize what all goes into that until you kind of get in. But it is a much easier medium for me to get and for a lot of other people to get my thoughts kind of put out there, and to capture some of these conversations that I have like every day in my day-to-day job with colleagues, whether it be people that I work with, people that I don't work with. The secret cheat code of podcasting we found out recently is it's a great way to meet people. We can't be in person, like a conference, but we can talk to people through Zoom. The technology is there to enable that, where maybe it wasn't before. That being said, I think it's time we've got a really amazing core topic. And I think that this episode, the core topic, is something we have never talked about before. I don't think we've ever mentioned this like string of words together. There's a lot of times we'll talk about technical SEO, we'll talk about content, we'll talk about offsite, we'll talk about local, all of the common topics. This has never, I don't even think I've ever seen this phrase until I opened up the prep sheet before the meeting, and it's a fantastic topic. So it is called zero-based SEO. So I'm going to let you guys go. Jeff, we'll let you run with this portion, but I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah. So when I was talking with Kevin, I was like, what would you want to talk about? And he was like, there's one thing that I've been kind of preaching about the last, few months, and that's zero-based SEO. And I was like, what is that? And how can we talk about that? So we really, I went to your website, read it on the blogs, and I was like, this is super interesting. And this is something that I think we've never talked about here, but I think it's something that really couldn't be done in the past. I think it's like with newer technologies like RankSense and things like that, like there's ways to be able to get this done. So, but without kind of like beating around the bush, Kev, what is zero-based SEO?
Sure. So the idea behind zero-based SEO comes from zero-based budgeting, where there are basically two types of budgeting. The one is where you, when you plan for the next year, you basically keep the budget you had the previous year. And the other one is the zero-based budgeting, where you say, okay, you for every year you plan from scratch what you need, and then you budget accordingly. And I love that idea because I think we're at an inflection point in SEO where things have become so complicated and at the same time so query specific that we cannot apply the same blueprint to every site that we work with, right? So I still remember at the beginning, early in my career, I was taught this kind of almost like checklist to go through. We would do these big audits for websites, and we would make all the changes, and they would, gain traffic. And that doesn't really work anymore today, right? There's so many factors and signals that come in handy. I think EAT is a fantastic representation of this concept, where it's not really in itself a ranking signal, but more the concept of many, maybe thousands of different signals that Google might look at, right? And so the reality is that we still have a high level map of what's important. We know that, for example, title tags clearly have a big impact. Content is important, backlinks are important, right? User experience becomes more important now. But from there, I think it's foolish to go in and say, all the content has 2 H1s, and that's going to make that we have to invest 100 engineering hours to change that, right? And instead, I'm a big advocate and champion of this idea of zero-based SEO, which means, okay, anything is on the line. We need to test pretty much anything at small scale, see what the impact is, and then roll it out, right? And that has fared pretty well. I think we started to dive into that at Atlassian. At G2, we're definitely in full rollout, and anybody can check in the results. It's also a philosophy that we're super bullish on at at Shopify. Very lucky to be in the growth organization at Shopify, but within my SEO team, I have one team that is solely dedicated to experimentation, and that team helps all the other teams, the tech teams, the content teams, to run their own experiments. So experimentation is table stakes for us, and that's the way of how we make big decisions. We roll them out at small scale, we look at the impact, and then we fire from all cannons. That's the basic concept of zero-based SEO.
It's great. So so testing in SEO can be tricky, right? Like using your standard, like Optimizely or Google Optimize or whatever the testing tools out there. Most of them aren't SEO friendly. So how are you getting testing done on, on a site? Are you hard coding on X amount of pages, or is it a tool that you're using that will like run the test for you and track it? I think there's RankScience was another one that kind of does something like that too.
Yeah, they're starting to pop up left and right, which is great. Yeah. We need more of that. And so there are different types of SEO tests. Generally, SEO experiments are all quasi tests, because for an actual quote unquote, and I have to be careful with how I phrase this here so people don't get the wrong impression, with a quote unquote actual experiment or scientific experiment, you need to have a randomized sample, right? You cannot say, okay, we pick exactly these things and as our test candidates. In SEO, we have to, because you only have one. You can only test with Google, right? You don't have a group of different of an audience or test candidates to pick from. However, you can still run quasi experiments and learn a lot from them. And so the first thing to look at is, what type of site are we dealing with? Is it an aggregator site, as I now call them, or is it an integrator site? Aggregator sites are all the marketplaces. Imagine like Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon, so social networks, e-commerce sites, and generally marketplaces of different kinds. Any site that has scalable page templates, G2 is one of them. That's where you can run A/B test at large scale. And then integrator sites, there's all the SaaS companies, publishers. Even though publishers are kind of a gray zone, they have dynamics of both. Jeff, you're the expert here. those integrator sites, that's where you have to run different types of tests, like snippet testing. That's a big one. And then you can you can cluster some types of content into groups, but it's much less straightforward as for marketplaces, for example, right? So at G2, we're able to say, hey, we have these 5 page templates. They scale across thousands of pages. So let's put them into groups, or put the same page template, take it and split it into groups, and then make a change to one of the groups and see what the difference is in outcome. So very simple, straightforward A/B test. There are different solutions out there, right? From SearchPilot, which is one of the biggest advocates, to a couple of smaller ones. You can do that. You can create your own in-house even, but make sure you have a data scientist, because that stuff gets tricky real quick.
Yes.
And then there are other solutions out there. I don't want to call out too many, like SEO testing, I know was one. ClickFlow, there's like MetaClick Pro that's now coming out. So there are a couple of different ones that allow you to basically say, okay, I don't have 100,000 pages, but I can still group pages around the same topic or with the same template into one group, and then find a control group, make sure, like, monitor for a while to make sure they have the same kind of click patterns, and then make a change to one of them, revert the change, which is super important and is often forgotten. And then you can get an incremental understanding. It's also called a diff on diff test, or difference to difference test.
Yeah, that's great. We, at the New York Times, we have our own A/B testing tool, which wasn't search friendly when I started there, but we're really working on performance, just because in publications, not our goal in general, but I think anyone whose goal is probably to get off of AMP and actually have one code base that'll work between them all. Google always preached, like, get away from M.dot sites, and then they make you have AMP pages, which totally contradicting that statement. But at the same time, like, totally makes sense. They're fast. So now that we have Core Web Vitals, we're trying to implement some things, but we didn't just want to blanket implement like changes because we didn't know if they would work or not. And now if they didn't work, I'm wasting developers' time. So they took their in-house testing tool and made it where it'll run out on the edge. So we use Fastly as our CDN. So it'll write its code and push it out to Fastly. And now we can test like performance, anything we want to do in performance on a flat version that's not using like, JavaScript to do A/B testing. And it's really been great. And like, really, it's only been focused on performance now, but I'm just like, this is going to be my tool when I'm done with doing performance, of just testing SEO changes, because there's so many times we want to change something, and like the engineering time, like, again, I don't want to prioritize this over something that needs to be done. So at least this way I can play in my own little world, push it out, see that change, run it on. Another great thing about being on a site that has millions of visitors, you can like run it out on like 1% and get like a statistical significance. You don't have to run it on 100% of your traffic. So that's great. So we're going to be trying a lot of that stuff. So that's when we brought up this topic. I'm like, ooh, this is kind of where I want to get into a little bit more. And I used to work for a CRO company, and so we did a lot of stuff there, just A/B changing button colors, and we weren't super advanced at that time. But it's great now that we're able to do this.
So I've got a point to interject. So as I've been dabbling into testing, which I honestly believe that this approach, at least for the near future, is the way of the future. But I do think if you can't figure out a way to do it in-house using some of these third-party companies that you all just mentioned, is a really viable option. But the problem that I've run into, and the barrier to entry for me, is really 3 things, right? It is cost. A lot of them run on the basis of page views. A lot of them sit out on the edge, which means that they're having to handle the load that's coming to your server. So if you get 1 million page views per month, and a lot of times they don't just focus on organic, they run on all page views. The tests affect organic, but the page views that are come from all channels, right? So that's something that gets figured into the cost, which literally, quite honestly, I was talking about trying to convince a client to do work with one of these third-party testing companies. I won't say which one, but we have a contract with the client and we asked the third-party company, hey, we want to do some testing on their site on their behalf. What would it cost to do that? And they said, okay, how many page views do they get? What's the site? So on and so forth. And they came back with a figure that was nearly as expensive as our contract. And that made it kind of like, I can't work with that. I can't go to the client with this budget and say, by the way, just so that we can do testing, you need to double your budget, right? That's just, that was a non-starter. So I think that there's the cost, there's the implementation angle to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge proponent of this, but developers who aren't as familiar with this, like I've run up against some skepticism or not wanting to bolt on or build their own technology with their existing stack for one reason or another. And then on the other side of all of this is you've got the old school SEOs, or the frame, like you said, Kevin, the framework based SEOs that just aren't caught up to the idea of testing. And there's either resistance to the idea of testing and becoming more data centric, or just ignorance. They don't know what they don't know. And all of those three things combined has led, at least for me, to a really difficult time pushing this mindset and this kind of shift in terms of how we handle SEO. And I wonder if other agencies, being on the outside looking in, are kind of going through similar things.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's that for certain sites, there's a very high bar to entry when it comes to a third-party solution. So I think some third-party solutions are for a very select group of sites. Generally, some larger companies, I think, can build a lot of that themselves. And I think if you have a good engineer paired with a great data scientist, you can cover a lot of the functionality. And then I think for everybody else, there are a couple of workarounds, right? You either do experiments on a much smaller scale, or you do simple before and after tests. I mean, to be straightforward, it's better to do before and after tests than no testing at all, right? And then there are a couple of smaller solutions that help you measure the changes when you change something like the title or some smaller things, and it's still valuable, right? I think we should not try to have an all or nothing approach to that. But I think it's a mindset shift. And that mindset shift came in part because I saw that the old checklist that I had wasn't working to the same degree anymore. The other challenge that I faced was that I couldn't, like you mentioned in the beginning, which I love, that implementation is one of the biggest hurdles. And I totally agree with you. SEO is more about what you can get done, not what you know, right? You can know the best trick in the world for SEO. It won't help you if you can't ship it. And shipping is a fundamental problem because SEO is, not as predictable as, say, like paid. And so when we know the whole kind of hassle and the struggle, but if you can ship something at small scale, improve the impact, shipping at larger scale is a no-brainer. And so it's not just a question of finding things that work. It's also about finding ways to get things done.
That's always a pain.
Yeah. It makes sense, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, the one benefit I have, like when I moved internal, is that like I get more up to bats with the dev teams. I have a chance to, like, I'm in meetings with them. I build those relationships. So now it's easier for me to prioritize things. But when you're external to that company and you're, not an afterthought, but you're not even a thought in a developer's mind. When you're consulting, working with a marketing team, you're like hoping that marketing team takes your recommendations and brings it to the devs to get things implemented. And a lot of times they lose that battle internally. I was a dev that would be like, go away, SEO people, like until I got into SEO, and I'm like, oh, now like I try to play that card. Like I used to be you, but now like I'm way better. No, okay.
No, but it's true. It's a question of math. Yep. Developers, very sought after. It's very rare to have SEO exclusive developers or engineers. Mm-hmm. We're blessed with that at Shopify. So, I'm
That's
counting.
Great.
Yeah, seriously.
Working on that here. So.
Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers for you. But it's not the standard. And that means you compete with other requests that have a clear dollar amount attached to them. Exactly. And if we cannot at least do that in SEO, stuff will not get done, right? And so testing at small scale is one way to say, hey, we saw this impact. if we do the math and roll this out across the board, this is what we expect in terms of not just traffic, but also dollars. And then all of a sudden, you start to turn open.
What kind of things can you test? Because we're talking about testing as a concept. And we know in SEO, it is heavily template based. And I've always thought that at some point there would be a point of diminishing return with things that you could test, because there are only so many templates and so many elements of the page. So where does it end?
I love that question. Generally, you want to test the things first that you think have the biggest impact. So anybody who's new to testing, I would recommend starting with things like title and snippet testing in general. It's one of the most underrated things in SEO in my mind, and it's not new, right? We all know description, title, and all that kind of stuff have an impact on attention or sometimes even rank. But that's where I would start: title, description, rich snippets, anything you can do in that sense. And you don't need a templated or aggregator site to do that, by the way. From there, I would go more on into the on-page elements, and you can test things like timestamps, last mod or recent modifications, subheadings, content length, authorship, author bio, all this kind of stuff. So from there, I think there are no limits. Of course, the more there are certain principles and dynamics that set constraints. Like the amount of traffic you get will decide to what level of granularity you can test. So not everybody can test a byline, right? Like that's New York Times maybe can, but there's a certain limit for sure. But you can test other things that are outside of on page. You can test internal linking, right? You can test around with that. So I would encourage to explore that. You can even, in some cases, test redesigns, right? Like roll it out in a certain section of your site. Can test things like URL structure, depending on your constraints in terms of the CMS and so on. But I think we can be and have to be much more creative than just the basics. But if somebody starts out, I would recommend starting with the snippets.
Yeah, we're working on testing, as I was saying, page speed, performance stuff. Core Web Vitals, just being able to change some things on, like, to improve our LCP scores or something like that. So we're able to run that now, and we're seeing some cool results from it. Mostly the core at New York Times is doing that right now, but over in Wirecutter, we're gearing up to take their experience and their knowledge and be able to run the same tests on our end.
Love that. Yeah, there's a ton.
So Kevin, did you coin the term zero-based SEO, or did that come from somewhere? I mean, obviously it came from banking, but are you the first person to put that phrase together?
I guess so, yeah. But I'm sure there's a better name to call it.
Have you copyrighted it? Because if not, I'm stealing it.
Let me give you the answer after the show.
Right.
Kidding. No, it's open for anybody to grab. There's no.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So any parting thoughts on zero-based SEO and SEO testing before we move on to Twitter questions of the week?
One quick one. I'm trying to keep it to 30 seconds, but I think it's important that we as SEOs make that shift mentally, right? And I think it's because we're at a point where we have to think about SEO more like investing or medicine even, right? Not that we save lives by no means, but that it's the same approach, right? Where first of all, you need to have robust studies to make bold public claims, right? So nowadays, when everybody says, "Oh yeah, I know that 100% that if you write long form content, that's always going to work perfectly," that's a red flag for me. That doesn't pass the sniff test, because I know, if there's no robust, first of all, you need one robust study. You need several robust studies, right? It has to be robust, is what I mean. And on the other hand, just a single study doesn't prove anything, right? It's the same in medicine. Like probably 5 studies don't prove anything either, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this whole it's this Bayesian idea, this like iterating toward the truth, with acknowledging that you'll probably never fully get there because the system is so complex. So that's something I'm really looking forward to see from the SEO scene over the next years. Is a more robust public corpus of studies that help us understand what really has impact these days and whatnot.
just in time for Google to change their algorithm and all their studies go. I'm kidding. I mean, some of that might be true, but for the most part, I don't think, I think those studies would be amazing. Cool. So we're gonna get into Twitter questions from the week. So this is where we beg Twitter followers to leave us some questions, and we get
We
to
beg and
answer, like
plead.
ask them direct to. We beg and plead. Some of them are great, and Morty is not that great, but we're gonna say it anyway.
He's a Steelers fan.
He is a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
They do stuff like that.
Right.
Cool. So the first one is from Mike Ginley, Twitter handle of Mike Ginley SEO. Any tips on dealing with burnout, time management, managing so much in your day job, but also creating and sharing so much of your site and social channels? I mean, it seems like you're everywhere and doing everything. It's like, how do you manage that? Like, and how do you manage, any burnout effects?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, I'm sure you guys feel the same about it, but Shopify is not just a 9 to 5 job for me. Like,
Yeah.
I do this all the time, all the time. And so what helps me, the thing is, there's this Marissa Meyer quote where she talks about burnout, and her thesis is that burnout is more about resentment. And the point is that everybody has something in their life that they don't want to compromise on, that they don't want to negotiate. And if that's being taken from them, that's when people burn out and become resentful. For some, that's dinner with their kids. For others, it's Friday taco night, I don't know, or Taco Tuesday and Friday, whatever night. Like, people have their rituals. And to me, that is working out. I'm very much into powerlifting, and I work out quite a lot. And so I have like a relative, not super fixed time, but every day at 4 to 5 p.m., I make sure to get up in the gym for a good 1 to 2 hours and really do something else. And that clears my mind. That lets out any frustrations. And at the same time is a good counterbalance to sitting at the desk all day. So that's it for me. And I urge everybody to find what it is for them, and then fight for it. Like, there's like, for something for me to not go to the gym that day, like, something really bad has to happen.
That's a great answer. So Jonathan Wilson, at Jonathan B. Wilson, in a larger org like Shopify, what challenges do you run into regarding influencing beyond your vertical? How do you overcome them?
There's a lot. I honestly love all the Twitter questions, especially Morty's, but we'll get to that later. But no, this is another fantastic question because it's a real problem. When I worked at Atlassian, that was kind of my one of the biggest drivers of success, I would say, is that I realized, even with a large team, I'll never be able to do everything that I want to. So by educating everybody in SEO, I kind of multiply my leverage, and that worked to a great degree. We educated designers, writers, engineers in their respective impact on SEO. We brought results back to them. That was huge. You would not believe how many people get hooked once they see what impact their deploy or their shipment has. And then we just generally advocated and beat the drum for SEO. So we made sure that we're represented in the all hands. We made sure that we share what's happening in SEO, what we found, the wins, even the failures, like what doesn't work. So we held ourselves very accountable to being transparent. And that did wonders. And so it's very similar at every company, and Shopify is no exception. Like, you have to help people learn about SEO. You have to share the wins, advocate for what you're doing. And if you create that type of culture, that like humble testing, high output performance culture, that is infectious to other people. That carries over, and they want to be part of that. So that's some of the tactics we play.
That's awesome. Cool. The third question is by Nikki Moser, at Knickers85.
Former guest. Alumni.
Former guest on the show.
Mm-hmm.
What's one piece of advice you would give to people creating SEO content teams?
That's a really good question. I now had a couple of reps where I had to redesign my organization completely. And so I have asked myself that question a couple of times. It is always a little dependent on the company you work for. Some companies have a strong writing culture. And other companies, to them, the concept is very foreign. So if you have a culture where people just generally create a lot of content and are very vocal, then it's much easier. Then you would want to put more resources into editing, making sure that you get the tone right, tone of voice, design, look and feel, style guides, and that you repurpose a lot of the content. When it comes to an organization that doesn't have that culture, that's where I would start with bringing some good writers on board and start creating a pipeline of content and a regular content cadence, and then iterate along the way. I learned that it's more important to get the machine going than having it perfect from scratch, because you'll learn a lot along the way anyway.
Yeah.
And you'll refine your style and tone of voice over time. I mean, Jeff, honestly, I feel like you really have to chime in on that question, because you're so much how much closer can you be to a writer culture than the New York Times?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm on the tech side, but I work, I look at my job is to make sure that all our content gets seen because we have, at Wirecutter itself, we're like 80 writers and editors. New York Times itself, it's I think it's 1 billion. There's so many. I mean, across the world, they have so many at that area. So, yeah, it's funny. I always joke because I am the technical side of things, but I took over a company at one time that was 100% link building, and my job was like the owner at the time was like, we need to get out of link building, so I'm hiring you to become a full service SEO agency. So I set a date where we're going to stop link building, and any of our link building clients, we were going to say like, we're writing content for you instead. So the company before would say, hey, you were worth, like, we're going to give you 10 new links a month. Like I was like, we're going to give you, not even saying that we're going to give you 3 pieces of content, because we didn't just want to force content down there. But growing a team from there, like I gave everyone who was there their first shots, like, hey, you're a link builder, you're writing out outreach, like we're just going to write about, we had like, I remember one client was all about like horse supply and tack, and I was like, we're just going to become experts in horses and kill it there. We also had a wedding dress company, and we became like experts in wedding dresses, to the point where when we lost that client, we went to another wedding dress company and we're like, look, this is all the content we wrote, this is all the stuff we've done, and they hired us actually from basing that off. So it was hard. It is really hard, especially not being a content focused person. I relied a lot on my leads and managers, but it was I remember there was one day we had issues with like spell checking. It was just like we would send out content that wasn't spell checked. So like, I know I did like the immature dad thing. I was just put like signs up like, did you spell check your work today? And like that was like, it was like a weird like badge, like, hey, great job. There's no errors. But that was also because we had like limited budgets and we could pay people. So growing the team is tough, and actually like getting the right mix there. But I've worked for some agencies where like the content team was like amazing. And again, New York Times and Wirecutter, like that is what we do. We are content. So I just watching how they work and those structures they have, they are very passionate, and it's finding the passionate people in any industry you're in is the tough part, because there's some people who just go through the motions, and there's passionate people.
So the interesting thing, over the course of time, and I feel like we should make an infographic about this with different careers that people come from before they were SEOs, is that at least without putting like actual stats to it, one of the things I've noticed over time is that a lot of people that come from a content background, before they did that and before they did SEO, they were journalism and came from a journalistic background, which is It's interesting that you're the fulcrum, Jeff, with the journalism in the New York Times and in the content. But a lot of it was predicated on the 2007, 2008 kind of financial crisis here in the US. I don't know if the financial crisis extended to the rest of the world, but a lot of journalists at that time found themselves out of work. The industry at that point in time was becoming, which was predicated on paper journalism, not digital journalism, was making that transition. And a lot of journalists became SEOs and content marketers. So I don't know if like there's something there with journalism and SEO and content, but it's definitely an observation that we've seen here.
I think people like to read or write and research, and that's kind of like a lot of SEO, right? It's like we dig into things, trying to figure things out, and and we have to write about them. So
yeah, and the content bar increases more and more, so you need better content creators, and that's often journalists. But I wanted to quickly address Nikki's question again, because I think I left a piece out there. And so some of the things that I learned are really important when it comes to putting teams together or designing organizations is you want to design for your goals. That's a hard lesson that I learned. But instead of designing for the people you have, as crude as it sounds, you want to design for the goals you have. And then number two is you want to hire really strong from scratch. I think a mistake that a lot of companies and people make is that they think, okay, we're just starting, so we're just going to hire people who are fresh out of college or have a year of experience, or some people who switch jobs. And no, you should start with a really strong hire who sets the bar. And then from there, you want to keep that bar. And then the third one is that whoever you hire, right? I think in a lot of cases, especially when you start a team from scratch, that will change a year in anyway, right? So most of the time you won't get it right from scratch. No org chart or org design is perfect. So acknowledge that, start in a good place, and then iterate from there.
Sounds great. All right. So now Morty's question. So from Morty Oberstein, at Morty Oberstein, how do I get to the point where I can jiggle my pecs? And I think you had a picture of Terry Crews, the infamous pec jiggler.
I think Terry was flexing his pecs.
Yeah, he's flexing, but they make him like bounce, like it's
That's right. Yeah,
it's one of those fancy
Terry's
things people with muscles can do.
He's crazy. And Terry Crews is legit, right? Like he's absolutely crazy. I mean, what can I tell you, Morty? Gave you an answer on Twitter. It's not just pecs you can jiggle, right? You can go the other route as well. Just drink a lot of beer, donuts help, pizza, sushi, steak, like all the good stuff. Just eat a lot and things
that's
will
my
start
weekend.
jiggling.
Just jump up and down. If you've got the right body type, just jump up and down, and there will be some jiggling going on somewhere. All right, so let's pick a winner. So we've got Mike with the burnout and time management. We've got Jonathan with the challenges of influencing a company kind of up when you've got different verticals. We've got Nikki with the building content teams question, and we've got Morty with the jiggle. Who's going to win?
This is where you get to pick.
This is where you get to pick. Yes.
It's tough. I would say I love Morty's question, but there's a but. In the sake of seriousness, I think I'm gonna give it to who had the hardest question. I would say Jonathan. I'll pick Jonathan.
All right, Jonathan, you are the winner. We are going to be reaching out to you to see what kind of Page 2 podcast swag you would like us to send you. So be on the lookout. And I honestly, all of those questions, even Morty's, which was funny, brought some comic relief. Our listeners were bringing it strong today with some really good questions, really like insightful stuff. So, this has been a good segment for us. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, sometimes like it does get down to the wire with questions getting submitted. But our listeners do a pretty good and pretty consistent job of submitting questions. And when they do submit them, they bring it strong. And the questions are really awesome, introspective, serious, sometimes serious, and good. So keep it coming, everybody. Jeff, why don't you take us home?
Sure. So we like to ask our guests one final question, and that is, what words of advice would you give to a person just getting into SEO?
It's all about practical experience. There's a lot of theory out there, and that's awesome. Spend some time looking at that, but nothing counts as much as practical experience. When I hire, I look for, have people done that before? Do they know what it takes? And you can sniff that out relatively quickly. So again, is like start your personal project, whether it's a blog, a mini shop, or something. Start a project that you can learn from, play around with, experiment, and gain practical experience.
Sweet. And this is one from like, I'm gonna go Shopify versus Wix. Which one should I pick? I'm kidding. That's just for Morty.
No, we're just gonna have Morty and Kevin come on, and it's just gonna be an arm wrestling episode. And it'll be
that'd
like
be
a
awesome.
30-second or 1 minute
Or
episode.
a donut eating contest.
Yes.
Well, maybe we'll do both, arm wrestling and then donut eating.
Yeah, it's like the Olympics.
And see who throws up first.
I'm game.
Oh my God. Kevin, you brought up a really interesting point with the practical experience, right? Because we talk about this a lot. There are a lot of SEOs that over time lose touch with the practical realm of experience and spend too much time. Not saying the conference circuit doesn't have its place. It's a great place to meet people, share ideas, so on and so forth. But there are SEOs that get too far away from the reality of what it's like to be a day-to-day SEO. And I think we've brought some SEOs on that are like more in the day-to-day grind. Not to say that we haven't brought people in that are on the conference circuit and so on and so forth. Yeah. But there is something to be said for the day-to-day SEO that's in the grind, that nobody knows their name. Some of the best SEOs in the world, nobody knows who they are, and they're in the grind every single day, getting the job done, right? So there is, if you're one of those people, don't feel bad that nobody knows your name, as long as you're ranking things and pulling results. Sometimes it doesn't matter if people don't necessarily know your name or if you don't speak. So that is one thing that we talk about a lot, because everybody, a lot of people I think that in order to do well in your career, you have to be well known in the space. And that's not true. You can progress and have a great career without doing a single speaking engagement or anybody knowing who you are. As long as you can get results, that's the freaking bottom line, man. That's our job. So
true.
PSA. True. All right. Well, Kevin, we're to use a baseball reference, we are rounding third and we're on our way home from the end of the doubleheader. We appreciate you coming on. This was an excellent episode. I would say from a podcasting standpoint, you've got a great radio voice. We've had a few good radio voices. I would not say that our voices are great radio voices, but you should I'm sure people would want to hear more podcasting from you, if for nothing else, because of the radio voice. You've got a great radio voice. You don't say, in my opinion, a lot of like or like the stutter words. I'm sure we do that a lot. I stumble
over my words all day.
Right. We've gotten much better, but your voice is a voice for radio, but that's just my opinion. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciated having you on as a guest, and man, it was a pretty awesome and insightful episode. So for those of you listeners, we will be back with 3 more episodes this season. That's it. We've only got 3 more all season, and then Jeff and I are going to ride off on horses together out into the sunset until next season. So 3 more episodes, and then we're off for the summer. It's summer vacation before we launch season 4. So everybody, have a good week. Not sure if we're going to post this episode as a 2-in-1 week or 1 week in 1 week. We'll surprise everybody, but it's probably going to be 2 episodes in 1 week. So I'm kind of interested to go with the theme of the episode in testing what happens. Maybe we'll do 2 episodes in 1 week more next season. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to test it.
You just do all 25 in 1 week. See what happens.
What we're going to do, we're going to test it, and then we're going to roll back to just 1, and we're going to look at the difference. That's what we're going to do. Exactly. All right, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.